Greetings, Mark Orang here, publisher of the Conway Daily Sun. And along with Damon Steer, reporter Damon Steer, are Conway Selectmen candidates Carl Thibodeau and Peter Donohoe. Carl, Peter, how you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Good. So we're going to get into the issues. I know Damon's got a whole phone full of them. And those young kids, you know, they just do everything by phone these days. But Carl, you're the incumbent, and you've been selectman for 4 terms?
It's 3, 12 years.
All right, so
yes.
You're going for even half dozen, or?
I don't know.
All right, so
I didn't intend to run this time, but we had some circumstances change at the town office, and which prompted me to say, you know, maybe my experience in that area is valuable, so I probably should try this once more.
All right, we can get into those specifics in a minute. And Peter, so, I mean, both of you guys are actually, I would say, conservative in the sense of conservative, I don't know about general politics. I know, Carl, you're sort of right of Attila the Hun over there, but, you know. But in terms of town and municipal budget politics, you're both, I think, fairly conservative. So, Peter, why are you challenging Carl?
I'm challenging Carl because I'd like to bring perhaps a new perspective to Town Hall. I've spent a lot of time in my 14, not continuous years on the Budget Committee. I had one brief spell away.
And you're chair now. So
and I'm chair now,
yeah.
and I've held that role for a couple of seasons. And I'm interested in doing more for the town. And I've had some very keen insights during my time on the Budget Committee into town, and for that matter, into school operations. And I'd also like to bring a North Conway freshness to the board as well.
All right, are there any, we might as well, why don't we, Damon, you want to ask a question?
Well, I just wanted to just briefly go
Sure.
over their backgrounds. How long have you both been in town, and what have you done for a living? Just very briefly.
Well, I was born here in 1951. I would be 74 in June, so that tells you how long I've been here, all of it.
So far?
So far, yep, my whole life so far. And I'm running because of this, I alluded to circumstances have changed. What has changed dramatically is the fact that the town of Conway has absorbed the Conway Village Fire District, and we now have to deal with water, sewer, and fire. And I spent 18 years as a commissioner of the Conway Village Fire District, 10 of those years as chairman. So I'm probably the only one either sitting on the board, or I don't know about Peter's background in any of this, but I don't believe you have a whole lot of background in water and sewer to the depth that I do. So I felt that I would be able to bring my expertise, if you will, or experience more correctly to the table, and another 3 years would be in the best interests of the town. And as everybody's well aware, Paul D. is retiring. Paul is the only other one at the town level that has any experience whatsoever in fire, water, and sewer.
I know there are always issues with fire, water, and sewer, and I know the ambulance contract, which we'll talk about, is a big deal, Carl, but the deal is done. I mean, Conway Village Precinct is no longer exists. It's been folded in. So what is there left to do?
Well, the original, I guess they call it an MOU, or Memorandum of Understanding, or contract, if you will, with the North Conway Water Precinct for processing Conway Village's wastewater is antiquated. It does not have an expiration date as such, but it is antiquated. And when in the process of negotiating a new contract with North Conway Water Precinct to bring us into more modern times and more reflect on some of the circumstances that are taking place today that really weren't taking place back when that contract was originally drafted. And I was actually at the district when that contract was written. I had a hand in writing it, although I was not the chair at the time, and I didn't have a tremendous amount of input. I'm quite familiar with it. And just as an example, one of the things that's changed is septage. septage haulers are now bringing in a tremendous amount of septage to the North Conway treatment plant to be treated, and that's been exaggerated by the fact that they're no longer allowed to field spread it during the summer months. So there are things of that nature that need to be dealt with, and that's one of the things that happens to be at the top of the pile right at the moment.
All right, Peter, you want to kind of address the I guess the need for expertise in that world?
Oh, sure. I'm glad to. Last fall, I was courted as a potential candidate to replace Sue Nelson on the North Conway Water Precinct Board of Commissioners. And I spent a fair amount of time, not anywhere near to the extent that Carl has put in and served Conway in his capacity, but I put a fair amount of time in beginning to understand more than just as a voter in the precinct, sort of the inner workings of the precinct, and I didn't complete the process because I told the folks that were interested in pursuing me for the position that I couldn't include that with the duties that I had with Budget Committee for this year. And I'll say about that process, and I'll also say with the immersion that the Budget Committee had into all of the inner workings of the water, sewer, and fire, and even ambulance with regards to Conway's municipal budget. We learned a lot in a really short amount of time. We spent a lot of time separately speaking with Chief Remington about the budgetary impacts. I'm not going to pretend that I have a strong operational sense of what goes on, but I have a pretty good idea what the framework is like and how the numbers work. And I'm a fast learner.
That's what they say. Damon?
Let's see. Did you guys just want to briefly go over what you've done for a living when you're?
Well, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a small business owner, have been since I was 23. I had a machine shop, I have a couple of commercial properties, and I continue to work at my hardware. I have a hardware store. I continue to work at the hardware store 2 or 3 days a week, just making a living.
And you own the big building, just so some frame of reference. You own the big building. I think that used to be a Yield House building.
It was originally built by Carol Reed when it was Carol Reed Ski Shop's distribution center when they were distributing clothing and ski accessories and outdoor goods throughout New England and beyond, actually. Then Carol Reed was sold. It went to a company in Pennsylvania who moved it,
Right.
and then I don't know what happened. It vaporized after that. Then Yield House did buy it, and they operated it for quite a few years. It is now home to the state of New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services, and the Veterans Administration runs a clinic there.
Nope, should be fewer people there anytime soon, I guess.
My machine shop, yeah, possibly. My machine shop was there, is still there. I do not own it any longer. I sold it to a company out of Biddeford, Maine last summer.
Oh, okay, and that's the building, point of reference, that's the building across from Hobbs Brewery and all that.
Tuckerman's.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Tuckerman's, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And by way of reference, my first job in town, I worked not exclusively at the distribution center, but I spent some time in Portland, Maine, the North Conway anchor flagship store for Carol Reed, and spent some time in Carl's building when it was Carol Reed Distribution way back when. And my entire adult life has been spent here. I moved here in the early mid-'80s, I guess it was. I met my wife. Her father had just passed away very suddenly. She and I immersed ourselves into her company business, and we ran that for 35 years until we sold it in 2018.
Lime and Oil.
Lime and Oil.
Yeah,
Yep, that's right.
And my apologies, Kirsten, I misspoke by saying Hobbs and not Tuckerman's.
Oh,
All right, go ahead,
Oh,
David.
okay. So there are some probably differences between you two on the operating budget this year. I'm not sure which way you voted.
oh, you didn't do your homework, Dan.
Yeah, I did a little bit. I
Sure.
I think there were some differences between the Selectmen and the Budget Committee on the operating budget.
There were indeed. One member brought forth some recommendations that resulted in a reduction that the Budget Committee brought forth to the deliberative. And as everybody knows, or maybe you don't know because you hadn't seen it yet, but the amount that was reduced was restored at the deliberative, all but a small portion for the airport and also some part of the police operating budget that had to do with fuel. I supported the budget reduction, which at the time was, I believe, $160,000, on the premise that there were some line items that we identified during our budget committee deliberations that we thought that were a little bit heavy, and it seemed prudent to make such a recommendation that we made.
Now, one of the
Oh, just Carl, did you?
no, let me just interject. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the things, Peter, was whether the airport money was in the budget or not in the budget.
That's right.
Where did you fall on that one?
As chair of the budget committee, as you know, I have to conduct the meeting, and there was an awful lot of debate the night that was discussed, the night that we made our budget recommendation that again was set forth to the deliberative. I agreed in principle with the idea that the $15,000 should not have been included in the selectmen's budget, and then in fact it should have remained as a warrant article. And I say that because I believe that it should be still the voter's choice ultimately, and,
All right.
and full transparency.
And Carl, you're involved with the airport personally, and you want to address in the budget, out of the budget?
Yeah, it was my suggestion, and the other four selectmen were in favor of it, to put it in the Public Works budget as a line item. Many years ago, it was in the Public Works budget as a line item when before SB2, and since SB2, it has never been there. For a period of time, it was done by petitioners and came in under nonprofits, which never should have happened. It should not have been under nonprofits. The airport is a kind of a unique thing, and the reason that it should be in Public Works is it's transportation infrastructure. It is not a nonprofit organization as normally thought of. It is a means of ingress and egress to the Mount Washington Valley for those who have airplanes or for those who choose to charter airplanes. There's a lot of air traffic that goes to the Mount Washington Valley. I mean, realistically, the only thing that you have two things in Freiburg that people come to see. They come to formerly Dearborn, now Hunting Corporation, who is basically there because of the airport. When Howard bought the place or started the place back in the mid to late 60s, and then you have Freiburg Fair. I mean, other than that, unless you have relatives in Freiburg or a specific reason to be there, there's really nothing there to attract people. So about 75% of the air traffic that comes into that airport ends up in North Conway.
All right.
So-
Any general now, regarding the budget, I mean, usually the town budget is modest it's obviously modest compared to the school budget. Your budget is what, 16 million this year? And what is it, 16, 17?
Yeah, it's right in there
Okay,
somewhere.
and the school
Actually,
budget's 40. You know,
15.
like
It's 15, and the school budget is
it's
about 41.
So in general terms, now voters pay both, obviously, but the town budget and the school budget are really separate, but they do affect each other. And I guess the question, I'll start with you, Carl, is that do you have a general opinion on the school budget? And I know we're not here to talk about the school, so I don't mean to digress into particulars, but do you think it affects, the fact that it's so big, do you think it affects the town budget?
Well, it really, it doesn't affect the town budget per se. It certainly affects the amount of taxes the average person pays. The town and the select board that is there now, and I will say the heads of all of the departments and the town manager work very diligently year over year over year to keep the town budget at rate of inflation or lower. This year, I think the rate of inflation was something like 3.2, and the town budget is up 2.6 over last year. So we work very hard to keep it in check as much as we possibly can. And the only thing that I'll say about the school budget, because I'm not a member of the school board and I try to stay away from it because it turns my hair grayer than it already is, I think that the school is out of control. If you follow Bill Marvel's column in the paper, I don't think he's exaggerating in the least. I went to school through this school system, and it's not the same school system that it was back then, or even back as far as 10 or 15 years ago. It's just out of control.
And Peter, what do you think? Do you think it affects the town budget? I mean, the school budget, they add a couple $1 million. I mean, it's like nothing because health insurance goes up and special ed. Gosh, if the town had an extra couple $1 million, you might be able to build some new parks. I mean, there's a whole bunch of money the town could do with a couple $1 million.
Sure. I view both, pardon me, the same way, and that is I try to look at school and town budgets as they're presented to us as objectively as I can. I will agree mostly with Carl's assertion that the department heads with the municipal side of the operation work very diligently and do a good job putting municipal budgets together. I spend a lot of time with John Eastman, the town manager, during budget season, and I'm listening to all of the effort that's being put forth. I will say that one of the things that is often not included when one is looking at the municipal side of the operation is what all the sum total of the warrant articles add up to. Because if you were to take, I think on an average year, warrant articles can vary anywhere from $2.5 to $3 million on top of the operating budget. So I think it's important to look at both school and municipal budgets holistically. Relating to the school side of the operation, they too this year have a very robust slate of warrant article requests, something that could also exceed $2.5 million. Noteworthy, though, is the fact that 2 of the warrant articles on the school budget would be funded in the event that there is a surplus at the end of the year, and they're asking to take up to $500,000. So it's a little gray as to what the actual expenditure might be once budget surplus has been determined. But as far as the relationship between the town and the school, that's not a thought I've had before. I'm going to tell you, and it seems like it's an interesting concept. I will, on first pass, have to say that I don't see a relationship there that has a great impact overall.
Okay.
We wanted to ask about, and one thing that we find particularly interesting about this race is it's kind of Conway Village versus North Conway in terms of the vote. You got, Carl's from Conway Village, and you're
Sure.
from Kearsarge. Does that change your perspective, or do you feel like you both have a town-wide perspective, or how does that work? How does being from one end of town or the other sort of change your perspective or create your perspective?
Well, maybe another way to put it too is, Peter, like, why do you think the selectmen need a representative from North Conway?
Because every other select person is from Conway, is the simple answer. I don't look at Conway in segments the way that sometimes it's suggested, even though I did say at the outset that I'm the North Conway representative, and perhaps that'll get me some attention and maybe some folks in North Conway whom I know will support me for that reason. But I look at Conway holistically, and I do that because I've looked at Conway holistically for the past dozen or more years through the eyes of the budget process. And I don't look at, I mean, sure, we looked at the Redstone Fire District, we looked at the Center Conway Fire District, but we look at Conway as a whole. And that, that one of the manifestations of that process is what we're seeing in our discussions about the ambulance, the upcoming ambulance warrant article, and the possibility that we may be doing business together between North Conway and Conway in the future.
Do you support a townwide?
I do.
Okay, and
I absolutely
Carl, I know
do.
you do too. So, Carl, how do you address this idea of that it's Conway Village centric?
It isn't, and I'll address it that way right out of the box. To me, which end of town you live on should not have any bearing or be of any consequence to the decisions you make sitting in the selectman's seat. Selectman represents the whole town. I have never made a decision in the 12 years that I've been there based on whether or not it would benefit Conway Village more than it would benefit North Conway Village. That's just in my opinion, that's a ridiculous point of view to even have. And if you're going into this job thinking that I'm going to weight my vote towards the what's best for Conway Village, then you probably shouldn't have the job. And if people thought that I were weighting my vote based on what's best for Conway Village, I would encourage them to vote for somebody else.
Okay.
Because that's not something that I would ever consider and has never been a factor.
All right, well, I mean, this came to a head with the whole the paid parking thing.
Sure
and
did.
Carl, I think you supported the paid parking in North Conway Village,
did.
and us poor folk up here in North Conway said, "Geez, why are you picking on us?" As I don't see any parking meters down in Conway Village, and not only that, it's just this bad idea. So, Carl, you want to address? And I think the town is waiting for the cell tower, and the reason why the selectmen ended it, a number of reasons, but I think mostly, and obviously, it's because they didn't have cell coverage because you were wanted to use an app to pay your parking meter. So I guess my question, Carl, and then Peter, is that if the cell tower gets put up, which is on Artist Falls Road, and gives us good cell coverage up here, do you think the selectmen are going to bring back? I hear that all the time. Selectmen are going to bring back the paid parking.
There's some discussion that's been had about whether or not we're going to bring it back. There seems to be now a split board as to whether or not we should. But going back to the original starting point of the conversation, Conway versus North Conway, the idea behind the paid parking was to see about a revenue stream that would help offset some of the taxes that tourists cause. And Conway, we wanted to start in North Conway because that's where the bulk of the tourists are. Conway, however, in the last 3 or 4 years has developed a little bit better infrastructure than they've had in the past. Some of the Main Street businesses have now filled up, and the discussion was back originally that if paid parking worked in North Conway, then it would go to Conway as a phase 2 approach. And I think that would still be the case. I certainly would not sort Conway out of that mix as far as dividing the villages are concerned. If it does happen in North Conway and it works, then Conway Village would be next.
So you still support it then?
Oh, absolutely.
Peter?
I did not support the proposal that was put before the voters the first time around. I didn't support it because, frankly, the entire project was a dumpster fire. There were problems with communication. Local businesses hadn't been involved in the decision-making process. The problem of, I'm just trying to remember all of them, but I'll just quickly remember the highlights. Problems with employee parking, problems with locals parking. And look, I'm not against revenue ideas for the town of Conway, knowing what I see, what comes before us on the budget committee with expenses. But it's also important to note that the revenue that's generated from parking has to go to related infrastructure things as it goes with the money that's collected has to go. It's not going to be an offset that a lot of people think would go against the general fund or anything of that nature. So there's some guidelines there that have to be followed. I think if it's to be brought up again, I think we need to take a breath and we need to do a detailed study, much like the city of Littleton did, and we need to look at all of the pieces of the puzzle in order to come forth potentially with a proposal for parking again.
I encourage both of you, whoever's sitting on the board, is to actually do a study this time, because when we analyzed this a couple of years ago, we couldn't, the people who are against it, including us and the Sun, we couldn't find any town who did it only for revenue. First and foremost, it was to control parking, for the benefit of the merchants to turn parking spaces over, and we don't have that issue out here.
That's right.
So to do it for revenue is a tail wagging a dog, in my opinion, but that's just my opinion.
One thing Carl's been particularly active about is going to Concord and trying to get the legislature to be a little bit more open-minded in terms of allowing towns to get revenue. Carl, can you talk a little bit about those efforts, and Peter would talk about your thoughts after he's done?
I've made a few trips down there. Been working very closely with David Page and Steve Woodcock, local representatives, until Jeb Bradley left the Senate. We were working with him. Now we'll be working with Mark McConkey. We've met with Mark already once this year. And I've been to Concord to testify at a House hearing not too awfully long ago in reference to their inability to tell us how many dollars of rooms and meals tax that the town of Conway generates. That to me is a real big issue, and I haven't gone down this road. It's going to depend on whether or not I end up in the selectman's seat again, whether I do. But at some point, I will be getting in contact with Governor Ayotte's office and trying to find out why it is that nobody wants to become honest about the revenue stream that's being generated here in Conway. One of the things that I heard from a representative up north in Coos County, I don't remember which town he represents, but he said that his biggest fear was that if they found out how much revenue Conway actually generates, that we're going to stick a hand out and want a larger portion of it. Yeah, that's why I want the information. I want to know how much is there. Conway got about $1 million last year in rooms and meals tax. I don't know the exact number, give or take. You know, did we generate 800,000 or 1.9 million? How much money did we generate? I found it incredible to think that the Department of Revenue Administration in today's computer age could not tell us where that money comes from. And I delved into it quite a ways with Jeb Bradley, and what we did find out was that that is a fact. Their methodology and their software does not allow them to tell us how much Conway generates, because they allow the businesses that are filing to do it in such a manner that it's not broken down. Okay, so that to me is a real problem, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it before I'm done. But yeah, I've spent a lot of time in Concord. I was down there 3 or 4 times last session, testifying on the $2 a night hotel surcharge, and we've also put a homestead exemption act before the legislature. It'll be coming up for its 3rd trip in the next session. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done there, and I know a lot of people in Concord, and I'm quite comfortable working with those folks. And
Peter, you ready
I'll
to go to
continue.
Concord?
I'd go to Concord, sure. I have been to Concord. I accompanied Carl and John Eastman and Chief Matty when we went down for a hearing. Was that a year ago, Carl?
Yeah, at least, yeah.
Actually, it was the first pass on the hotel bill, which everybody knows was deemed inexpedient to legislate and didn't go anywhere. First of all, thank you, Carl, for your efforts there, because Conway has representation in Concord, and I think that's important, and I'd be happy to fill that space in the event that I prevail in the election. I don't know people in Concord the way that Carl knows, but I have energy and I have time, and I would have plenty of enthusiasm and motivation to do the same kind of thing. I've been following the hotel bill. I've been following the homestead exemption. I'm open-minded to the hotel tax being rethought, and I think because it's gone before committee twice and has been disregarded in both of those occasions, I think we have to change perhaps the way that is framed, and I'd be very open-minded to that. Regarding rooms and meals, I too agree with Carl that the problem that Conway generates more than it receives is in fact a great problem, and while I appreciate any effort that would go into trying to change that, I don't know, I can't imagine a circumstance where that can change given the current setup. And I think the first step would be to determine just how much we are getting. I think that would be a worthwhile undertaking. I'm sorry, how much we're generating. I think it would be worthwhile to understand that. In terms of trying to resolve the inequality regarding how much we generate versus how much we get back in return, I don't know that there's a solution to that
Right. Mostly, the reason there's no solution is because the legislature is heavily down in the southern part of the state. We're outvoted all
Right.
the time. Why are they
Right.
going?
The
Why does anybody in
representation isn't
Concord
there.
want to give us money up here?
Precisely.
I want to ask about short-term rentals because I feel like you two would differ on that issue as well.
Okay.
Who wants to go first?
Well, let's back it up. Maybe start with the what I was going to ask a related question too about the inspection program, because the Stacy Sand, former Selectman Budget Committee member, got up at the deliberative and said, "Hey, why do we have these extra inspectors kicking around basically at town hall since we don't have an inspection program right now?" And I'm paraphrasing her, and I'll tell you, just as an editorial comment, my experience with anybody at town hall, inspectors, I mean everything is just, you guys are just really good. So I don't personally, and I don't see where there's like an issue there, but could you address that, and also the idea of what can we do about STRs, or do we want to do anything about STRs? Carl, why don't you start?
Well, we started out back, I don't know how many years, 3-4 years ago probably now, trying to determine what we were going to do about STRs and how we were going to address them and get them under control. And at the time, they were really out of control. There was a lot of party houses and complaints and so on and so forth. We had a committee. I sat on that committee. We drafted all kinds of regulations. But when we boiled it all down to simple terms, which is anytime you get involved with government, the simpler the better if you can do it. What it turned out to be was that what we actually needed was a noise ordinance that applied to everybody in town, which we did pass, okay? And we needed to make sure that these things were safe and habitable, okay? Because and what we're finding out, we have found out, is I'm not going to say that they were unsafe, but some of the ones that we inspected didn't necessarily meet today's safety standards, okay? So that was an issue, and it's not really turning out to be as big of a deal as I thought it would be. But the problem that you have is when we sued Mr. Kudrick, and we asked for an expedited judgment so that we could move forward with whatever program we were going to go forward with, and the judge ruled that it was a residential use.
Right, we lost.
Okay.
The town lost.
And then we appealed it, and just as a matter of record, because it is, if you want to go look it up, I voted not to appeal it. I felt that the judge used correct referencing and did what they were supposed to have done, and it was just going to be good money after bad. Not that it makes me any smarter than anybody else, but when it was all over and done with, it turned out that Supreme Court then ruled the judge used all the correct reference materials, and it turned out to be good
All right,
money
but let me
after
just
bad.
let's just back it up without. I mean, the STRs is one thing, and I know it gets a little complicated to talk about inspections, but because the inspections really weren't just geared for STRs; they were geared for all residences, right?
Well, we haven't gotten there yet.
I'm getting there.
Okay, go ahead. We don't have 4 hours.
Okay, I'm
But you said.
I'm trying not to be long. So you're absolutely right. So cutting through to today's circumstances as to where we are and what we're doing, we felt that to be non-discriminatory about it, that the best thing to do was adopt a residential inspection program. I fought this program years ago when people wanted to do, we had selectmen that wanted to have residential inspections done, and I fought it tooth and nail, and I managed to prevail right up until recently when I gave up after I found out some of the things that were going on in town by contractors who had showed up from wherever they showed up from and were doing shoddy work and so on and so forth. So now we have residential inspection.
For building construction.
For building construction, for any residential, okay? So I'm going through it right now. I'm building a garage at my house, and I'm going to heat it, so it's subject to all of the new building codes, and the inspector has been there multiple times, and everything's going along fine. So there is that. But as far as that applies to STRs, we're not singling out STRs per se, but we're looking at any rental property that, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, while you're on the phone,
No,
if I were taking a break.
We're looking at any rental property in the town of Conway, whether it's a
Isn't there
single
some
family.
language? Isn't there some language? And Damon, maybe you can catch me up on this. Isn't there some language on the ballot on the warrant this April that clarifies some of the inspection stuff? What is it?
Yes, there's a change to chapter 72.
So
Yeah, there are several that are on
but
there.
in the short order, people don't have to register now, right? It's on hold.
It's
correct?
on hold at the moment because there has been a suit filed by the short-term rental people to tell us, or to ask the judge to tell us that none of this is legal. It really kind of, it's kind of a funny set of circumstances, in my opinion, because all of these people that are screaming that this isn't legal and you can't do it, most of them have come up here from areas that have these programs. So they came from those programs, yet when we try and implement those programs, they scream about how illegal it is. It's kind of ironic if you really
So
look
just
at
to
it.
understand, just for our viewers, Damon, and all of you, but if the clarifications pass in April, does that mean you're going to start the inspection program again, or do you have to wait for the lawsuit? Or are you going to, the selectmen are going to wait for the lawsuit?
It's going to depend on which clarifications pass. The town put forward their own, okay, which if you look at the warrant, you'll see that there's some that are recommended by the Board of Selectmen and some that are not. The ones that are not were submitted by petition by the short-term rental owners group.
Well, let's say
okay?
let's say the selectmen are the ones that pass.
If the towns pass, then we will most likely begin to move forward with our inspections and start enforcing them.
Okay.
No, it's with the affidavit, if I remember. This
self-affidavit.
time.
Yes,
With the
yeah.
self-affidavit. And basically, landlords would have to fill out a form and say, hey, I'm renting a property. And then if it changes hands or there's like a change of use where someone starts running for a first time, then they have to fill it out. I think that's the gist of it.
Okay, but the point is, because it does get a little in the weeds, it's going to start. So Peter, go
Well,
ahead.
possibly. If the lawsuit, it depends what the short-term rental people do in court, right? I mean, if it passes and then at that point, the lawsuit kind of picks back up again and both parties, you know, the town, the short-term rental people, and the judge kind of decide where we're going next.
The short answer is it depends on which version of Chapter 72 passes in April.
That's
Okay,
right.
Peter, go ahead.
So-
Spend a couple minutes on all that.
I'll come at it
And we're down to
in a
3
different
hours,
way.
too.
We're down to 3 now. Well, I won't be that long. I supported the Selectmen's warrant article language changes for Chapter 72 that's on this year's warrant. I'm on the understanding that the council that gave advice to the town about the self-affidavit, that part of the process is sound. Whether that results in the lawsuit starting back up or not, I couldn't say. Though I'll mention about the lawsuit, I think the short-term rental group believes that they're being picked on, and they're not, because this is for all rentals in Conway, all homes that have that sort of activity going on. And I think the reason why they are suing is because they're organized. And the average rental person who owns rental
Long-term.
property in town, long-term and such, they're not organized. So it's not a big stretch to see. Perhaps that's why that's going on. I expect the voters will support the changes to Chapter 72, and I expect that we will be able to move forward with it. And I hope we do, because I think that the architects of this plan, when Paul D. and some town staff first put this together, I don't think that they were singling out short-term rentals. Yes, they include short-term rentals, but there have been a lot of comments in the past that this was a backdoor way to regulate short-term rentals. And in fact, it's not when you look at the big picture, and I think that's what's important here.
All right, do both of you, in a kind of a yes or no, you believe now, because we've never had residential inspections, right?
Right.
Never, ever. So both of you conceptually believe that it's now time to have inspections through a self-affidavit or
Sure.
for long-term and short-term?
I think so, and I'll quickly say, and then let Carl answer as well. because Carl alluded to it, there's a lot of building going on, and I think we need to have a level playing field with regards to building. And I think the prospective buyers in the area, whether they're moving into a new home for the first time or they're moving laterally from one to the other in the valley, I think that they should have, or in Conway in this case, I think they should have that as a minimum expectation that things are done to a certain standard, and I think it's appropriate.
Carl?
Yeah, that's the reality of it. Like I said, I was always in opposition to it, but we had a small area with a small number of known contractors around here. Every one of them did good work, and you could go out and get a contractor and build a garage or add on to your house or build a new home and be fairly confident that what you got was a quality product. Okay. Unfortunately, in this day and age, and I'm not going to say that it's the fault of people from Massachusetts or Connecticut or Rhode Island. There are builders that I've run into from various parts of New Hampshire that do the same thing. They have a tendency to they cut corners. It seems as though, and I'm sure Peter's run into this too, in the business world today, it's not like it used to be when we were doing business out there all the time, every day. People just don't do things the way they used to. It seems like it's not about the quality of your workmanship, it's all about the buck you can generate.
Boy, I don't know about that. There's some pretty shoddy old houses around here. that
Well,
I've
there
run
is
into
that,
I know
but
about.
you know,
So-
those were usually built by people who built them
And there were-
themselves.
some of those were locals too.
But and that brings us, you know, as I say that brings us around to another situation. You still allow people. We still in the state of New Hampshire, they still allow people to build their own home. Okay.
But you still need license. You have a license for the utilities, though. Plumbing.
No,
and
you
those, right?
don't. No, you can't hire a plumber unless they have a license, but you can do your own plumbing. Okay. I can't hire an electrician to come and do wiring in my house, but I can do my own. Okay. So there's another reason right there where building inspection needs to be done, especially in things like plumbing and wiring. Okay.
All right, let's move on.
Oh,
David.
we gotta ask about sign ordinance enforcement. I know we don't want to get into legal mumbo jumbo, but just in theory, you know, Selectmen, you know, and the town has gone to the mat on its sign ordinances, and you know, some people say, you know, the town's gotta do what the voters told it to do when it passes these ordinances, or some people say, oh, this is, you know, too much enforcement and be a lot more laissez-faire. I'm just wondering how you two feel about sign ordinance enforcement.
If the voters pass a certain ordinance and there's a requirement, performance requirement or a design requirement, then it should be upheld. And I 100% support the town's position regarding the landmark case that's going on with the present.
So you think
situation.
Levitt's thing is a sign, not a mural?
Yes,
Yeah.
I absolutely do.
Carl?
Yeah, we have boundless legal opinions on all of that and the verbiage on all of it. The only ones that seem to be in opposition to the fact that it's a sign is the people that filed the suit, the Institute for Justice out of somewhere in Virginia, who goes all over the country doing this because they can. They seem to feel that it should be allowed, and there's a lot that I can't get into because a lot of it is a legal opinion and has been done in non-public session because it is legalese based on the town of Conway. But what I can tell you is this, and I wrote this on Facebook to a group that was expounding on the fact that we should just throw our hands in the air and walk away from it and let them have their mural. By definition of the ordinance at the time, it is a sign, period, end of story. Okay, so if we don't prevail, okay, and I'm not saying this will happen, but there is absolutely nothing to prevent it from happening. You can have 30 by 30 signs all up and down the Mount Washington Valley saying anything that that the people that put them up want them to say, short of profanity that is not allowed by Supreme Court rule at this point anyway, and there won't be a thing that the town of Conway can do about it. And for everybody that is on the side of Levitt's, all I'm going to say at this point is just be careful what you wish for.
Let me just, the thing that I had issue with the whole Levitt's thing is not so much whether it's a sign or a mural, and I happen to think it's a sign. It's got pictures of donuts on there, you know. But to me, it's the way the town handled it. I mean, obviously, it's not. I mean, was it a hill worth dying on? Because you had that thing up there, you know, the kids did it, blah blah blah. And then once you enforced that one, you went back and enforced it on Settlers Green on their quote-unquote murals, which have been up there for years. So couldn't the town said, look, there's a big question about this. Why are we going to, you know, make a big deal out of it? Let's revise the sign ordinance to make it clearer, and then pass it next year so that it would take care of that. I guess my thing is like all of a sudden, boom, you enforce it. I realize it's letter of the law, but talk about stirring a hornet's nest for.
Well, they're in the process of doing some rewrite to the sign ordinances to determine what a mural is, okay, so that you have more clarity on whether that is or is
Right,
not
so
a mural.
why didn't you do that
okay?
first instead of taking it to court, instead of trying to enforce it?
Because you didn't want to get into a situation where you had the ability to have all of these huge signs all over town. And if you allow it for one, then you don't have a choice. You have to allow it for everybody.
All right.
Okay.
So Peter, do you think that you agree they should have just enforced it right then and there?
I agree. There may have been some missteps, but I think setting that kind of a precedent was perhaps more dangerous than just allowing it.
All right, we only got 10 minutes to go. One thing I'd like to get to is Mark Council's Article 57.
Sure.
And I call it, you know, remember the old thing, if you got a mutt, it's a Heinz 57? Right, you know that thing? It's like, if you have a mutt, they call them a Heinz 57, a
yes.
mutt, like a
Yeah.
bow.
Yeah.
And so I haven't, you know, and Mark's ears going to be burning with this one, but I haven't got my head around this, but that to me is what this seems like. Ostensibly, Mark is saying it's about trying to get the planning board and the selectmen to work better together, but he's really going after the rec path. And as an example, in a letter that he has, or a column that he has, is he says mismanagement about how the selectmen paved the little parking lot by the Brown Church, which contributed to the flooding when we had the flooding 2 years ago. So, and what his Article 57 says is that it somehow forces planning board and Conway, the selectmen, to work together, and some of these projects has to go to a town vote. So it seems like for that parking lot, which the selectmen just did, right? You just decided, somebody did it, Paul D., that something like that would have to go to a town vote, which seems a little ridiculous. That's why we have professionals at the town hall. So, who wants to start with Article 57?
I'll keep it brief. The whole thing boils down to this. Okay, I think that we've gotten into a situation where Mark is picking and choosing. Okay, first of all, this is going to include everything. Then he comes out with an amendment at town meeting that says, well, it doesn't include the library and it doesn't include
Skate park.
the skate park.
Right.
Okay,
Because everybody likes it.
then we've got this whole dog park thing going on down there now, which everybody seems to be in favor of. And now he comes out and he says, well, it's not going to include the dog park either. Well, look, guys, it either includes everything or it includes nothing. You can't just sit there and pick and choose what pet projects you want to deal with, okay? So there is that. But we have opinion from council, and we have looked at it and come to the following conclusion. Even if this passes, there's nothing really in it that is enforceable. There's nothing in there that the selectmen actually have to do. All of this is already taken care of under state law, and it is all spelled out as to what the selectmen can and can't do. So it's contradictory in most of it to what current state law is.
All right, so Peter, you're going to get a chance in a second, but just to follow up on that, part of that is that Mark contends that there's not good relationship between the planning board and the coordination between the planning board and the selectmen. What do you think about that?
I think that that's absolutely untrue. The planning board and the selectmen work together, and I will qualify that by saying when necessary, okay, when needed, when it's an obvious issue that should be dealt with by both boards. But the two boards have completely separate and distinct functions. And the selectmen don't get involved in planning of hotels and motels and things going on the strip. And the planning board doesn't get involved in things that are directly related to the selectmen's responsibility, building a small parking lot adjacent to a school. Okay, there was absolutely no reason that I can think of that the planning board should have bothered to spend time getting involved in that. And it's not that they shouldn't have input. What a lot of this boils down to, Mark, is time. Okay, the selectmen are busy. The planning board is busy. We have a lot on our plate. Why would we want to get involved in planning on the strip when we've got other things that take precedent as far as what the selectmen should be doing? And conversely, I don't see why the planning board wants to get involved in things like that little tiny parking lot when they've got bigger and better things that they should be dealing with. That's just the way it is.
All right, Peter? Both coordination and the specific article.
Sure. I'm going to talk about the coordination piece first because it's freshest in my mind. The reason why I don't think that the boards don't cooperate. I think that there was a missed opportunity for the select board to invite the planning board on the project relating to the proposed phase 2 of the rec path. And I say that for one extremely important reason. I don't think that the select board, given the magnitude of that project, all in the town of Conway and a lot of it on town-owned land, I don't think the select board is equipped to ask the right questions of the people who are proposing this project. And for that reason, I think that that would have been a perfect opportunity for the select board, at their discretion, because they could have chosen to do this, to invite the planning board to be part of that process. I attended a meeting in January, which was 1 month after a meeting where the planning board subcommittee relating to the proposed rec path made their recommendations known at select board meeting. That was the meeting that was at the Marshall Gym. There were many of us who wanted to go to that meeting because that was an agended item to speak about the rec path. And there were a lot of folks there, and there was a lot of good conversation. There were a lot of folks from out of town, which is fine, but you know, this is a Conway thing at the end of the day. It just seemed, you know, that process just is not flowing smoothly. And evidence of that is at the January meeting I mentioned a minute ago. I asked the select board at the end of the meeting under public comment, has anybody looked at, taken action on, or even considered, have there been discussions about any of the planning board subcommittee's recommendations about the rec path? And I got blank stares from all 5 select board members who were all present there at the time. And that's unfortunate because I think there's an opportunity here to do something together. And for whatever reason, everybody's on this campaign to stay in their lane. And this is too big of a project, and the impact of this is too great, and the long-term implications of this so incredible that we have to work together on this. And that's one of the reasons, well, probably the reason why I do support warrant article 57, or as I think someone calls it, PA 57, People's Article 57.
Oh, wow.
And,
Sounds like
and,
Mark.
and I support it. It does sound like Mark, and perhaps I should give him credit for that because that's probably the case. And I do support it because I think at the outset it encourages, perhaps enforces transparency. And I think that's really important because in my long foray into understanding how this this rec path thing has all come about, I've come to understand that transparency has not been the hallmark of this particular project without going into great detail. I think that it's been something that's been shooed in. I think there's some coziness between people who are not elected, people on the outside who are part of a special interest relating to this. who have gotten the ear of folks at Town Hall, and things have moved along very swiftly for that reason. And I think the impact that this potentially may have should be decided by the voters and not by just the boards, in this case, the Conservation Commission and the Select Board.
I mean, as a whole, we only have 5 minutes for one thing. And as
Sure.
a whole, another half hour on the whole rec path thing. But Carl, I just want to answer the fact that, because the selectmen support the rec path as written, as it is, right?
Yeah.
So can you, I mean, you think,
This goes back so much further than most people would even want to talk about or remember. But I've got a timeline here with me if you want me to drag it out and start reading through it. But basically, all of this rec path was designed, vetted, designed according to the master plan, approved by the planning board, approved by the board of selectmen, went to a vote of the people, and this all happened back in 2011, 12, 13, up through to 2017. Okay, so in my opinion, what we're doing now is we're just going against what the people voted for 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and we should just go ahead with what was put on the table at that point in time and do it the way the people said to do it.
Can I add?
Are you just against the rec path?
No, I am not against the rec path. As I hear from folks on the Trails Association all the time, you know, it's the snow's almost off the rec path. It's almost time for you to go roller skiing. I'm on there 3 or 4 days a week.
Okay.
I love the rec path. I don't love the fact that the Select Board and the Conservation Commission are ignoring the deed restriction in Whitaker Woods, and I don't love the fact that the entirety of this project has some real problems that have yet to be clearly understood by most people.
And the deed restrictions, go ahead.
And I will add, to Carl's points, the first 2 times the rec path came before the voters, there was a warrant article to accept. For some strange reason, this time no warrant article to accept. So I don't know what changed between the 2011 and the 2015. I'm sorry, the 2015 and the 2018 versions when grant monies became available. But suddenly, this time, we're just going to do it without putting the vote before the
Okay,
people.
without considering the process that the planning board should be involved in order people, like what's the problem with the rec path as it is now? What issue? Now, when you say the deed restrictions, you mean Chubby Whitaker?
That's right.
And that's what he keeps it supposed to be wild and forever, right?
That's right.
But the thing ain't wild anymore. You cut trees up there, you get trails, you get this, you get that.
Well, I've read the legal opinion that the town got on the going forward with this. I don't tend to agree with it, and I don't tend to agree with it principally because there's very little precedent in case law regarding people who decide to build or challenge the wild and natural provision. There's very little. The folks from the Trails Association have singled out the case in Maine in Baxter State Park, which has some similarities, but fundamentally is nothing like putting pavement down. That had to do with snowmobile access across the northern end of the park, to be short, not with changing forever the overall look. Pavement and infrastructure and a road that's built to a DOT standard is not forever wild and natural by the way I look at things.
So you're just against the paving of it, not the path.
That's correct. That's
Carl,
correct.
What?
Carl should probably have a rebuttal because he had.
Yeah, go ahead. We're going over a few minutes, but that's okay.
To me, it is a situation where you have first of all, there's only 1,500 feet of that is involved in the deeded parcel that came from Chubby Whitaker. Okay, the rest of it is there's a parcel in there that was purchased from a Bancroft, and there was another one, and then there's some CMP, not CMP, co-op.
New Hampshire Co-op.
Right away,
Yeah.
and the New Hampshire DOT right away for what was originally going to be the bypass. Okay, so there's only 1,500 feet that's involved in the original Whitaker Woods, and I look at it this way. I don't think that it's a real problem to pave that 1,500 feet so that mothers with strollers and older folks with wheelchairs should be able to get down through Whitaker Woods and be able to use that. It to me is just not a situation that screams, "Oh my God, we're ruining the environment" to pave a strip 12 feet wide, 1,500 feet long. Through that particular piece of property. It's been vetted by the environmentalists. If it wasn't, we wouldn't have been able to get the grant. We have the grant. This whole thing was all studied and gone over multiple times many years ago. I just don't have a problem with it. I think that it should be done, and I think it should be done so that everybody can enjoy it.
All right, Peter, do you have any last? I mean,
Yeah,
we
I
can go
beg
back
to
and
differ
forth.
with Carl on that point
but the-
entirely.
Right, go ahead.
Do we want to do like closing statements? 'Cause
No,
it-
yeah, we'll just
Sure.
we can go over for a few minutes. We'll
Okay,
let
sure.
Peter, yeah.
I think the Board of Selectmen in Conway have a duty and an honor to uphold that deed restriction. That was true in 2015 when the grant money that was that the Trails Association may have gotten, turned out they didn't get it. But again, there was a warrant article to accept it and to expend it should it be made available, and it didn't happen that way. But in 2015, the story was totally different. The language at the deliberative on that particular warrant article, the enabling warrant article to accept and expend the grant money, the language was changed at the deliberative to strike the name Whitaker off of the warrant because the Trails Association knew then, just as they know now, that Whitaker Woods was a hot button, and they knew that they would get people's ire up if they went forward with that. They also declined in that warrant article to include the word pavement, and the president of the Trails Association at that time stated that they didn't want to get people all ruffled over pavement. They were just going to say it was just going to be a solid surface, and that would be decided at a later point after the grant was awarded. Ultimately, the Trail Association did not receive that grant money, so it didn't go forward. But back to the deed restriction, though it may be legal, according to the town council's opinion that it's illegal and it's all green light and they should go forward, I think there is a duty there for the selectmen to uphold that deed restriction. And I think it sets a really dangerous precedent because the baby boomers in this town are not going to last forever. And if any of us want to give anything to the town of Conway, we're going to have a second thought about it if this goes through.
All right, I think Carl, you said that well. I guess the idea of extending a north-south road through Whitaker Woods is not going to fly then, huh?
Whose idea was that?
Mine. All right, so I mean, both you guys are you're both well-respected elected officials. So it's going to be hard for people to decide. So maybe if you could just do as Damon is suggesting, do a closing statement and maybe couch it in terms of what your priority is in a short answer and why you're going to be different than your opponent. Carl, or
My priorities at this point are fire, water, and sewer, and fire, including the ambulance service, which is the biggest reason that I stayed on, or hopefully will be able to stay on, which is the biggest reason that I'm running again, is to bring that level of experience to the board and hopefully have some valuable input in the negotiations with the North Conway Water Precinct. And also with my legislative contacts in Concord, I hope to be able to serve a valuable purpose down there as well, and we could get this $2 a night hotel fee passed, and ultimately the topping on the cake would be if we could get the Homestead Act passed. That would be the biggest benefit to the most people in the town of Conway. Those are my priorities.
all right, Peter.
I share what Carl was just speaking about, legislative priorities. I would, in my capacity as selectman, be happy to spend time traveling to Concord to advocate for things that help the taxpayers in Conway, and work with our local representatives, which I've done some of that in the past as well, on similar initiatives. In terms of priorities, I think my overall goal is to, and this is very broad, but would be to serve the people of Conway, to represent Conway, to uphold all of the regulations that we have, and to listen and to be active and to participate, and also to encourage more discussion at select board meetings. I've attended an awful lot of them, and I have great regard and respect for the folks who have taken their time to attend the meetings and participate at the meetings, select board members I'm speaking to now. But there's not a lot of discussion, there's not a lot of debate, and that concerns me. There's an awful lot of consensus voting that goes on with the board right now. And I would like to stimulate more debate and more discussion and dig into some of these difficult issues that are facing the folks in
And you think you
Conway
could do
now.
that better than Carl?
I'm not going to say I do it better than Carl, but I have a particular way of doing that. I've had great experience with the budget committee. We've had some very active and long debates. Maybe the
Very
long
long.
part not so good, but when the former chair and I would discuss about participation, he and I would often be heard to say things like, what can we do to get this board more engaged, more involved, because we had shorter meetings, people were just saying yes or no or whatever. And I think through my leadership, I'd like to think through my leadership, I've encouraged people to engage. I know that's been done at the expense of perhaps longer meetings, Damon, that you've attended.
Go into the next day.
That go into the next day, but that one wasn't my fault. That was a long list of warrant articles. But I think it's important to have discussion, and I also think it's important that we tackle some of these hard issues.
All right, Carl, you can 30 seconds to respond to the not enough chit chat on the Selectmen's board.
Well, the board that we have now is a good board, and we pretty much most of the time are on the same page. Of most of what goes through the select board right now doesn't require a whole lot of discussion. They say, well, what do you think? Well, I think we should. And they say, okay, what do you think? And take a vote. And 5 say, yeah, we should. It's very smooth at the moment. Okay, and most of us agree most of the time. We've had heated debates over different things at different times, and that's good. But I don't see any point in dragging things out if everybody's on the same page. There are a lot of times when I'll sit through an entire meeting and not say anything, because I'll read the room and say, yeah, that's going just the way I want it to go, and just sit there and keep my mouth shut.
All right, well, I think we're way over time, which is fine. You guys are fascinating interviewees, and voters are going to have a tough choice here. This is going to be really the marquee race, don't you think, Damon?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so good luck to both of you, and
Thank you.
thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.